Well, life is always teaching you something. In terms of spiritual evolution, perhaps there isn't a lot more for people like me to learn. In terms of expanding the limits of consciousness, perhaps there isn't much further to go. If I look back, say 2 or 3 years ago, the state of consciousness I was in then compared to now isn't very different. So there isn't a big growth in consciousness happening anymore. It's a gentle expansion, perhaps. I think the growth now is more in love and in sharing and in being useful. It's more in practical ways, in learning how to be a more effective teacher, learning how to be a father.
You have a child?
Yeah.
It's a she or a he?
It's a boy.
It's a boy?
Yeah.
How old is he?
3.5.
3.5.
Mm. So there's always things to learn. Learning how to drive a race car fast and safely. There are things that can always be learned, but in terms of the evolution of consciousness, I don't think there's a lot more in that area for me to learn. But in the application of that, in sharing it, I think there's a lot more to learn. Yeah. And the sharing of it is probably the most important part. Learning it inside for yourself is the first part, but being able to share it usefully with other people, I think that's the big challenge, and that part I still have a lot to learn.
Since when are you sharing this?
8 years.
8 years. And what has been until now the most difficult part, if there is any difficulty, because of course...
In my work, you know?
Yeah.
But there isn't any difficulty, it all just happens automatically. Mm-hmm. Since the very first satsang, I sat down 8 years ago with people for the first time, and somebody asked me a question, and I just started talking. And it's always the same. Whenever anybody asks, I have no idea what I'm going to say, and the words just flow through. So it happens automatically. So it's very easy.
And for the people that are asking questions, what do you think is the main difficulties? Or everyone has its own?
Everyone has their own problems.
Everyone has its own.
But the problem that everyone has in common is that they're identified with their mind. And they think this mind is me. And this thinking that the mind is me is called the ego. And that's the basic problem that everybody has. And while you're identified with the mind as me, you'll suffer.
So who gets enlightened?
The soul.
What?
The soul.
The soul?
Yeah. Your individual soul merges with the universal consciousness of God. And in this merger of your individual soul with divine consciousness, there's an explosion of light in your soul and being and heart and mind. So it's your individuality, which is essentially your soul, that becomes enlightened. And part of the soul is the mind. So as I was saying earlier, the mind itself becomes a vehicle for that light. And then the mind is no longer just a narrow little ego mind. It's a big, wide, bright, open, universal mind that's filled with light and love. The mind has tremendous capacity for expansion beyond its narrow little box that most people live in.